The locksmith asked me why I was changing locks on a brand new house. I told him I wanted an upgrade. But the truth is, I was locking out ghosts. People who had keys they were never given. My father called what I did betrayal. My brother called it selfishness. The police called it a family matter. But when that locksmith handed me those new keys, he said something I'll never forget. Most people wait too long for this. He had no idea he was talking about more than doors. You clicked this because the title felt familiar, didn't it? Maybe not the exact details, but the shape of it. The way your victory got turned into someone else's crisis. The way your milestone became their emergency. The way you were punished for growing. Here's the pain this video addresses. You've been taught that love means shrinking, that being a good daughter, son, sibling, or friend means making yourself smaller so others feel bigger. You've been told that boundaries are selfish, that protecting your peace is cold, that saying no is cruelty. The myth we're busting today is that family loyalty requires self-betrayal, that you owe people access to your life because you share blood or history, that your success is somehow theft from people who didn't build it. What you'll walk away with is a framework for understanding emotional hostage-taking, the ability to distinguish between guilt and responsibility, and maybe, if you're ready, permission to stop apologizing for surviving. This isn't about cutting people off or becoming cruel, it's about something much harder. Learning that you can love people and still lock the door. Let me take you back to that Tuesday. I wore a blazer I'd bought specifically for this. I'd practiced my signature the night before because I wanted it to look confident, even though my hands were sweating through the pen. The title company had these big leather chairs, and I remember thinking, this is what adults do. This is what arrival looks like. I signed, and signed, and signed. My hand started cramping around page 15. The woman across from me, professional and calm, kept sliding papers toward me with little sticky tabs that said, sign here, initial here, date here. It was mechanical, routine for her. For me, every signature felt like I was writing my name into a different life. When they handed me the keys, the woman smiled and said, congratulations, homeowner. She said it the way you'd say it to anyone. Routine, professional, kind. But in that moment, those two words felt like a life raft in the middle of an ocean I didn't know I was drowning in. I held those keys in my hand, and they were heavier than I expected. Not physically, emotionally. These keys meant I had a door that locked, a space that was mine. A place where I could be alone without someone barging in to tell me I was doing it wrong or asking what I was hiding. I drove to the house, my house, and I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes. Just sat there. Engine off, keys on the dashboard. I took a picture of them, the keys against the black plastic of my car's dash, a little blurry because my hands were shaking. I posted it online with some caption about dreams and hard work, the kind of thing you're supposed to say, the kind of thing that sounds good and means nothing and everything all at once. I got 43 likes. I watched them come in. Little hearts, little thumbs up. Acquaintances from high school, coworkers I barely talked to, a few friends who genuinely meant it. But I kept scrolling, kept refreshing, waiting for the names I actually wanted to see. My mother didn't like it, my father didn't comment, my brother didn't see it or pretended not to, and I told myself they were busy. I told myself they'd call later. I told myself maybe they just didn't see it yet. Maybe the algorithm didn't show it to them. Maybe they'd text me privately because public stuff wasn't their style. I waited. I walked through the empty house, room by room, imagining furniture I didn't have yet. I stood in the bedroom and thought about how I'd arrange things. I opened the closet and thought, this is mine. I turned the lock on the bathroom door and thought, I can shower without someone pounding on the door asking when I'll be done. I made a list of everything I needed: curtains, a bed frame, groceries, towels, basic things, adult things, and I kept checking my phone. Here's what I didn't know then. Some people can only celebrate you when your joy doesn't highlight their stagnation. My house wasn't just a house to them, it was evidence. Evidence that I'd left. Evidence that the family story, we struggle together, we stay small together, we never rise above our raising, was a story I'd stopped believing. But I still believed I owed them something. I still believed that maybe, if I just waited, they'd come around. That belief lasted exactly 72 hours. You know what's strange? Right now, as I'm telling you this, someone watching is sitting in their car in their own driveway. Maybe it's not a house. Maybe it's an apartment, a new job, a relationship they finally left. And they're waiting for a text that's never going to come. They're waiting for someone to say, "I'm proud of you." And I just want you to know, if that's you, I'm saying it. I'm proud of you. I don't even know you, and I'm proud of you, because I know what it took to get those keys. If you need to hear that today, leave a comment. Just say driveway, that's all. Two of us will know what it means. And if you're tired of waiting for people who'll never show up, hit subscribe. Because we're building something different here, a place where your wins matter, where your boundaries aren't up for debate. I'll be here. Keep going. Friday evening. I'm unpacking boxes in the kitchen. I'd been living out of suitcases and takeout containers, slowly transferring my old life into this new space. My phone was on the counter, face up, because I was still hoping, still waiting for someone to ask how it felt, to ask if I needed help moving, to ask anything that acknowledged I'd done something worth acknowledging. It buzzed. I grabbed it so fast I almost knocked over a box of plates. Dad. My chest did this stupid, hopeful thing where I thought, finally, finally he's going to say something. I opened the message. Your brother needs a car. His broke down. Wire $50,000. Don't let him be defeated by you. I read it 3 times, 4 times. I read it until the words stopped making sense and then started making too much sense. Your brother needs a car. Okay, that's a statement of fact. Cars break down. That happens. His broke down. Still with you. Wire $50,000. Wait, 50,000 for a car, not a loan, not help with a down payment. Wire. As in, send it now. As in, it's already decided. Don't let him be defeated by you, not by circumstances, not by bad luck, not by his own choices or lack of planning or the general unfairness of life. By you. As if my roof was a weapon. As if my locked bathroom door was an act of violence. As if me having something was the same as taking something from him. I sat on the kitchen floor, still holding that box of plates, and I felt something crack inside me. Not heartbreak. I'd felt heartbreak before. This was different. This was the crack of a foundation I'd built my whole life on. A foundation I'd thought was solid, realizing it was made of sand the whole time. I'd given money before, smaller amounts, a few hundred here. 1,000 there, always with the promise it was the last time, always with the shame that I had it and they didn't, always with the silent prayer that this would finally be enough, that this would prove I loved them, that this would buy me the kind of relationship other people seem to have with their families without even trying. But $50,000 for a car? When I'd just stretched every dollar, lived on ramen and peanut butter, worked 3 jobs, saved for a decade, sacrificed vacations and new clothes and nights out, just to scrape together enough for a down payment? I opened my banking app. My hands were shaking again, but not the good kind of shaking from the title company. This was the kind of shaking that happens when your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. I set up a transfer, $1. I typed it in carefully. 1.00. I stared at the memo line. My thumb hovered over the screen. And then I wrote it. For gas. I want to be clear about something. That wasn't revenge. It wasn't pettiness. It wasn't me being cute or clever or trying to make a point in some snarky way I could screenshot and show my friends later. It was translation. I was finally speaking the same language they'd been using with me for years. The language of exactly what you're worth to me. Because here's what that text message said in translation. You don't own your success. Your success is family property. Your hard work is our hard work. Your bank account is our bank account. And your boundaries are offensive. Your having something we don't have is an act of aggression. I hit send, $1, for gas. And then I put my phone face down on the floor and I sat there in a half-unpacked kitchen in a house I'd bought with my own money. And I waited to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, regret, anything. What I felt was quiet. A strange, hollow quiet. Like the sound after a long argument finally ends. Not peaceful, just absent of noise. I thought that would be the end of it. A boundary set. A message sent. My father would get the notification, $1 from Eleanor, for gas. And he'd understand. Or he wouldn't. But either way, it would be over. I could go back to unpacking. I could go back to building this life I'd worked so hard for. But boundaries, I learned, are only the beginning of the real fight. Sunday morning. I'm drinking coffee in my living room. Still no furniture except a folding chair I'd borrowed from a friend and a card table I'd found at a thrift store. I'm sitting there, looking at paint swatches, trying to decide if I want the bedroom to be gray or blue, trying to feel like a person who gets to care about paint colors. Doorbell rings. I'm not expecting anyone. I haven't given my address to many people yet. Part of me still has this flicker of hope. Maybe it's my mom. Maybe she's come to see the place. Maybe she brought a housewarming gift, or just wanted to say she's proud of me, even if she couldn't say it in front of Dad. I open the door. 2 police officers, both men. One older, one younger. The older one has this tired look on his face, like he's done this 1,000 times and he's already exhausted by what comes next. The younger one has his hand near his belt. Not on anything, just near, like he's ready. The older one speaks first. Ma'am, we received a call about a family dispute. Your father says you're withholding funds and denying access to a family property. Family property. Those 2 words landed like a slap. This house I'd bought. With my name on the deed. With my credit score, my decade of saving, my 3 jobs, my skipped meals, my sacrificed everything. Family property. I felt my face get hot. I felt my hands start to shake again. And I felt something else. A creeping sense of shame. Like I'd done something wrong. Like I was in trouble. Like I was a child being scolded, even though I was standing in my own doorway, in my own house, at 32 years old. They didn't arrest me. They didn't come inside. They didn't even ask to come inside. But they made me stand on my own porch, on a Sunday morning, in my pajamas, and explain why I wasn't giving my brother $50,000. They made me justify my no. I tried to stay calm. I tried to explain. This is my house. I bought it. My father asked me to send my brother $50,000 for a car. I don't have $50,000 to give. I sent what I could. I'm not withholding anything. This isn't a family property. It's my property. Even as I said it, I felt crazy. I felt like I was the one who sounded unreasonable, because why else would the police be here? Why else would my father call them? There must be something I'm not understanding. There must be some way I'm wrong. The older officer looked at me for a long time. Then he looked at his partner. Then he sighed. Ma'am, this is a civil matter. We can't make you give anyone money, but maybe just talk to your family. Work it out. Work it out, as if there was a middle ground between my boundaries and their entitlement, as if compromise was possible between I own my life and no you don't. After they left, I closed the door, I locked it, and I stood there in my entryway, in the house I dreamed about for years, and I didn't feel safe. I felt exposed. I felt like the walls were made of glass. I felt like my father could reach through the door and grab me any time he wanted, and the law would just shrug and say, "Work it out." I called a locksmith, right then, didn't wait, didn't think about it, just Googled locksmith near me, called the first number, and said I need all my locks changed today. The guy on the phone said, "Today's Sunday, it'll be double rates." I said, "I don't care." He said, "I can be there in 2 hours." I said, "I'll be here." I spent those 2 hours pacing. I checked the locks on every door 3 times. I checked the windows. I looked out the front window every 5 minutes like my father was going to show up. Like my brother was going to pull into the driveway with some crowbar or some lockpick or some entitlement so strong it could break through deadbolts. When the locksmith arrived, he was older, 50s maybe. Had this weathered look like he'd seen things. He looked at my door, looked at me, and said, "New house?" I nodded. "Yeah, just closed on Tuesday." He raised his eyebrows. "And you're already changing locks?" "That's smart. Most people don't think about it, but you never know who the previous owner gave keys to. Contractors, neighbors, relatives." I didn't correct him. I didn't tell him it wasn't about the previous owner. I just said, "Yeah, I wanted to make sure it's secure." He nodded and started working. I watched him. There was something calming about it, the way he moved, methodical, competent, like he'd done this so many times it was muscle memory. Unscrewing the old locks, installing the new ones, testing them, handing me the keys. Halfway through, he said, "You'd be surprised how many people I do this for. New houses, I mean. You'd think it's mostly old houses or people who lost their keys, but no, a lot of new houses." I asked, "Why do you think that is?" He looked at me, really looked at me, and he said, "Usually it's exes, sometimes it's family." I felt my throat tighten. "Which is worse?" He didn't hesitate. "Family. Because society tells you you're supposed to give them a key." We didn't talk much after that. He finished the job, handed me a set of shiny new keys, 3 copies, front door, back door, side door. He said, "Keep one, hide one somewhere safe outside in case you lock yourself out, and give one to someone you actually trust." Someone you actually trust. Not someone you're related to, not someone who demands it. Someone you trust. I paid him. Double rate. Worth every penny. After he left, I locked the door with the new lock. It made a different sound. A cleaner sound. A sound that said, "This is yours now." And I stood there in my entryway, and for the first time since I'd gotten those keys on Tuesday, I felt like I could breathe. But breathing isn't the same as peace. And that week, I learned the difference. I need to pause here for a second because my hands are shaking just remembering that moment. Standing on my porch, in my pajamas, explaining to strangers why I don't owe someone $50,000. And if you've ever had to justify your no to people who had no business asking, you know that feeling. That sick feeling where you're not even sure anymore if you're right. Where you start thinking, maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am the problem. So I'm just going to say this clearly. You're not crazy. The fact that you're here, watching this, questioning whether you're too much or not enough, that's proof you care. That's proof you're trying. The people who are actually the problem don't watch videos like this. They don't question themselves. So if you've made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Not because I need it, but because I need you to do one small thing today that says I matter. That's it. One click that says my experience is real, and drop a comment. Any comment, so I know you're still with me. Because we're about to go deeper, and I don't want you to go there alone. Let's talk about what my father actually said. Don't let your brother be defeated by you. That sentence contains an entire world view. It contains a blueprint for how my family operates, how power works, how love is defined. In functional families, one person's success is celebrated as a win for everyone. Your daughter buys a house? That's amazing. That's something to be proud of. That's evidence that you raised someone capable and strong and independent. In dysfunctional families, one person's success is evidence that resources are being hoarded, that someone is cheating, that the scales are unbalanced and someone needs to fix it. Here's the deep truth. In systems built on shared suffering, your healing is a threat. Because if you can get out, if you can build something, if you can be okay, What does that say about everyone who stayed? What does that say about the story they've told themselves about why life is hard? Your freedom asks them a question they don't want to answer. What if the cage was always unlocked? So they reframe. Your success becomes their oppression. Your boundary becomes your cruelty. Your self-care becomes your selfishness. And listen, this isn't always conscious. I don't think my father sat down and thought, how can I manipulate Eleanor today? I think he genuinely felt hurt. I think he genuinely felt like I was withholding something that belonged to the family. I think in his mind, my $50,000 was our $50,000, and I was being stingy. But feelings are real without being accurate. Their pain is real, and it's also not your responsibility to manage. This is the paradox. You can acknowledge their feelings without funding them. You can love people and still say no. My father felt hurt. Okay, that's real. My brother felt jealous or left behind or whatever he felt. Also real. But their feelings don't create an obligation for me. Their discomfort is not my emergency. Their inability to celebrate me is not my problem to fix by shrinking. I felt crushing guilt after I sent that dollar. Not because I thought I was wrong, but because I'd been conditioned my entire life to believe that their discomfort was my emergency. Let me give you a framework because this is important. Guilt is what you feel when you've violated your own values, when you've done something that goes against who you want to be, when you've hurt someone in a way that's inconsistent with your integrity. That's guilt. And guilt is useful. Guilt tells you, hey, you need to make this right. Shame is what you feel when you've been told you're bad for existing, when you've been taught that your needs are inconvenient, when you've internalized the message that you're only good if you're useful. That's shame. And shame is not useful. Shame is a trap. Responsibility is what you have for your own choices and their direct consequences. If I lie to someone, I'm responsible for the broken trust. If I make a promise and break it, I'm responsible for the disappointment. That's responsibility. I was not responsible for my brother's car breaking down. I didn't break it. I didn't cause it. His car breaking down had nothing to do with me. I was not responsible for my father's financial planning or lack thereof. I didn't make his choices. I didn't spend his money. I didn't create his situation. I was not responsible for managing their emotions about my success. I didn't create their jealousy. I didn't ask them to compare themselves to me. I didn't make them feel small. But I felt guilty anyway. Here's why. Dysfunctional families install guilt like malware. They teach you early and constantly that your worth is measured by your usefulness, that love is transactional, that you exist to serve. So when you stop serving, the system sends error messages, guilt, panic, the feeling that something is terribly wrong. But that feeling isn't truth, it's programming. The real question isn't, do I feel guilty? The real question is, have I actually done something wrong, or have I just done something different? And here's where it gets even more complicated, because the people demanding from you will use the language of love to do it. My father didn't say, give me money because I want it. He said, don't let your brother be defeated by you. He used the language of family, of care, of protection. He made it sound like I was the one being hurtful, like my boundary was an attack. This is how it works. They take your boundary and they reframe it as abandonment. They take your no and they call it betrayal. And if you're not careful, if you haven't done the work to separate guilt from responsibility, you'll believe them. You'll think, maybe I am being selfish. Maybe I should just give the money. Maybe keeping the peace is more important than this. But here's the thing. Peace without boundaries is just silence under occupation. It's not peace, it's surrender. It's you deciding that their comfort matters more than your survival. And I don't know about you, but I was done surrendering. My father didn't say, can you help your brother? He said, wire $50,000, not a request, a command. And buried in that command was an assumption that my resources were family resources, that my money was our money, that I didn't actually own my own life. This is the unspoken contract in many families. You can grow, but only as far as we allow. You can succeed, but only if you bring everyone with you. You can have things, but only if you share them on demand. And if you refuse, you're not just setting a boundary, you're breaking a sacred covenant. Here's the thing though, you never signed that covenant. It was written before you were born and handed to you as fact. But contracts require consent. And you're allowed to say, I didn't agree to this. I never agreed that my success was theft. I never agreed that my bank account was communal property. I never agreed to manage everyone's feelings about my life more carefully than I manage my own life. I never signed up for that. And neither did you. That locksmith didn't just change my locks. He gave me a visual representation of something I'd been trying to do emotionally for years. Control who has access. In healthy relationships, access is earned and mutual. There's trust. There's respect. There are doors, sure, but they open easily because nobody's trying to break them down. In unhealthy relationships, people act entitled to you. Your time, your money, your space, your emotional energy, your body, your decisions. And when you try to limit that access, they don't knock. They barge in. Or worse, they call the police and claim you're withholding something that was never theirs to begin with. Here's the practical truth. Sometimes love requires a locked door. Not because you hate the person on the other side, but because you finally respect the person on the inside. I locked my doors because I needed to know that my space was mine, that I could come home and not brace for an ambush, that I could exist without surveillance, that I could be alone without it being a punishable offense. And I want you to hear this. If the idea of locking your door feels extreme or mean or cold, ask yourself why. Ask yourself who taught you that privacy is suspicious, who taught you that boundaries are rude, who benefits from you believing that. Think about what happened after I sent that dollar. I didn't curse anyone out. I didn't post about them online. I didn't call them names. I didn't trash talk them to relatives. I just said no with $1 and a boundary. And they called the police. When someone escalates in response to a calm boundary, they're telling you everything you need to know. They're telling you that they believed they owned you. They're telling you that your autonomy feels like theft to them. They're telling you that they'd rather weaponize authority than respect your no. And here's the hardest part. You have to let them be angry. You cannot boundary set your way into their approval. You cannot explain yourself into their understanding. You cannot make yourself small enough to make them comfortable with you being whole. The only way out is through their anger, through the guilt, through the accusations and the silent treatment, and the flying monkeys who'll say, "Why can't you just keep the peace? Why do you have to be so difficult? Why can't you just give a little?" Because peace without boundaries is just silence under occupation. I already said that, but I'm saying it again because it's the thing I wish someone had told me 10 years ago. You are not responsible for keeping the peace when the peace requires your destruction. Okay, I want to give you something practical here, something you can actually do. Because it's one thing to hear all this and nod along and think, yeah, that makes sense. It's another thing to actually do it when your phone is buzzing with messages and your chest is tight with guilt and everyone is telling you you're wrong. First thing, name the pattern. Get out a notebook, your phone, whatever. Write down 3 times someone in your life got upset with you for having something they didn't, or for doing something they couldn't. Not abusive situations. I'm talking about everyday jealousy or resentment masked as concern. Like the time you got a promotion and your sister stopped calling. Or the time you set a boundary with your mom and suddenly you're the topic of conversation at every family gathering. Or the time you said no to a favor and you got the silent treatment for a week. Look for the pattern. Is it always the same person? Is it always around the same theme? Money, success, independence, your body, your time. Naming it takes away its invisibility, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. And once you can't unsee it, you stop gaslighting yourself into thinking it's all in your head. Second thing, separate feelings from facts. Next time someone says you're making me feel bad, or you're hurting me, or you're being selfish, pause. Take a breath and ask yourself, did I do something harmful, or did I just do something they didn't like? Harm requires repair. Discomfort does not. You're not responsible for making people comfortable with your growth. If I actually harmed my brother, if I actually did something to him, then yeah, I'd need to make that right. But I didn't. His car broke down. That's not harm I caused. That's life happening. And my refusal to fix his life with my money isn't harm, it's a boundary. Third thing, practice the micro no. You don't have to start with $50,000. Start with, I can't this weekend. That doesn't work for me. I'll think about it. Let me get back to you. No explanation, no justification, just a simple clear no. Small no's train you and them. They teach you that you can survive the discomfort of someone being disappointed. They teach them that you're no longer an automatic yes. And here's what's wild. Most people won't even push back. They'll just move on to someone else. Because they weren't asking you specifically. They were asking whoever would say yes. Fourth thing, get comfortable with silence. After I sent that dollar, I didn't argue. I didn't explain further. I didn't send follow-up texts trying to make my father understand. I let my no be the period at the end of the sentence. Silence is not cruelty. It's clarity. When you keep explaining, you're communicating that your no is up for negotiation. When you go silent, you're communicating that the conversation is over. Fifth thing, physical boundaries matter. If you need to change your locks, literally or metaphorically, do it. Change your Netflix password. Stop sharing your location. Get a P.O. box. Create a separate bank account they don't know about. Update your emergency contacts. This isn't paranoia, it's architecture. You're building a life where your safety isn't dependent on someone else's mood. If this is hitting you in the chest, if you're feeling seen or angry or validated or scared, I need you to do something for me right now. Leave a comment. Just one word. Locks. That's it. I'll know what you mean. I'll know you're here. I'll know you're trying. And here's why this matters. Every time someone leaves that comment, someone else scrolling through sees it, and they realize they're not alone. That this thing they thought was just their weird, broken family is actually a pattern, a system, something that has a name. So your one word might be the thing that gives someone else permission to change their locks too. And if you want to go deeper, if you're ready to hear what happened next, what it cost, what it gave me, hit that subscribe button. Because Chapter 2 is where it gets real. Chapter 2 is where I'm going to walk you through the aftermath nobody warns you about. The guilt, the grief, the messages. How to survive when doing the right thing feels terrible. I'll see you there. The morning after I changed the locks, I woke up and forgot, just for a second, that everything was different. I made coffee, I checked my phone, and then I saw 67 missed messages. From my mom, my brother, aunts I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, a cousin who didn't even know my address, every single one with the same theme. How could you? Family first, you've changed, we don't even know you anymore. And underneath all that noise, one message from my father. 4 words. You'll regret this, Eleanor. And here's the truth. Part of me did regret it. Not because I was wrong, but because nobody prepares you for how lonely it feels to be right. In Chapter 1, we talked about the moment of the boundary, the wire transfer, the locks, the police. But here's what nobody talks about. What comes after? The guilt that follows you into every room. The family members who suddenly have opinions. The grief of losing people who are still alive. The confusion of wondering if you're the villain in someone else's story. The core pain Chapter 2 addresses is the aftermath. The isolation of doing the right thing. The suffocating second-guessing. The way boundaries don't feel like freedom at first. They feel like exile. The myth we're dismantling is that once you set a boundary, you'll feel immediately lighter. That cutting off toxicity is clean and empowering and Instagram-worthy. The truth? Sometimes the right choice feels terrible. Sometimes freedom is terrifying. Sometimes you have to grieve the family you wanted while protecting yourself from the family you have. What you'll gain is a roadmap for the after. How to sit with the guilt without reversing the boundary. How to tell the difference between loneliness and solitude. How to build a new definition of family that doesn't require your destruction. This chapter is for the part of you that wonders late at night if you made a mistake. You didn't. But let's talk about why it feels like you did. I didn't open those 67 messages all at once. I couldn't. I read one. Then I put my phone down and stared at the wall. Then I read another. My mom. Your father is heartbroken. Do you even care? After everything we've done for you? I stared at that message. Everything we've done for you. I tried to make a list in my head. What had they done for me? They'd fed me as a child. That's not a favor. That's the legal obligation of a parent. They'd housed me. Also not a favor. Also the law. They'd criticized every choice I made. They'd mocked my dreams. They'd told me I'd never amount to anything, and then acted shocked when I did. They'd borrowed money and never paid it back. They'd shown up when they needed something and disappeared when I did. So what exactly had they done for me that I now owed $50,000 for? Next message. My brother. Wow. Guess money really does change people. Congrats on becoming exactly what you said you'd never be. I had to read that one twice. What did I said I'd never be? Successful? Independent? Free? Because yeah, I'd become all those things. And apparently that was a betrayal. An aunt I barely knew. Family is supposed to help family. I don't know what happened to you, what happened to me. What happened to me is I stopped setting myself on fire to keep other people warm. What happened to me is I started believing I deserved a life. What happened to me is I got tired. Here's what was so disorienting. None of them mentioned the $50,000. None of them mentioned the demand, the entitlement, the word defeated. They only talked about what I did. The dollar, the locks, my coldness. I was being tried for a crime and the evidence was that I'd stopped volunteering for punishment. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to screenshot my bank account and show them how hard I'd worked. I wanted to write paragraphs explaining boundaries and self-respect and autonomy. I wanted to make them understand. But here's what I learned. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will never respect your explanation for having them. So I didn't reply. I let the messages sit there, unread, unanswered. And the silence I gave them felt like the loudest thing I'd ever said. But silence doesn't mean peace. And that week, I learned the difference. A few days later, a cousin I barely remembered sent me a long message. She said she'd heard what happened. She said she understood both sides. Both sides. As if there were two equal sides to give me $50,000 or I'll call the police. She said maybe if I just apologized, things could go back to normal. Normal. As if normal hadn't been killing me slowly for years. But here's the part that broke me. She ended the message with, I just don't want you to lose your family over pride. Pride. That word sat in my chest like a stone. Was it pride? Was I being stubborn? Was I choosing my ego over my family? I spent 2 days turning that question over and over. And then I realized they'd reframed my self-preservation as arrogance. It wasn't pride that made me say no. It was clarity. It wasn't ego that made me change the locks. It was safety. But in their story, I was the villain. And villains don't get to be tired or scared or broke. They just get to be proud. 3 weeks after the locks changed, I was sitting in my living room, still barely furnished, and I just started crying. Not because I regretted it, but because I was mourning. I was mourning the parents who might have celebrated me. I was mourning the brother who might have said, I'm proud of you. I was mourning the version of my family I'd carried in my head since childhood. The one that didn't exist. The one that maybe never could. Here's what they don't tell you about boundaries. Sometimes you're not cutting off people. You're cutting off hope. The hope that one day they'll see you. The hope that one day it'll be different. The hope that if you just love them hard enough, give enough, stay small enough, they'll finally love you back the way you need. And losing that hope, even when it was built on nothing, feels like death. I let myself cry for hours. And when I was done, I felt something unexpected. Not relief, not peace, just space. Space where the hope used to be. Space I didn't know what to do with yet, but space nonetheless. I want to tell you something I've never said out loud before. There were nights during that first month where I'd draft apology texts. I'd write them out, full paragraphs. I'm sorry for hurting you. I'm sorry for being difficult. I'm sorry for having boundaries. And I'd stare at those drafts for hours, finger hovering over send. And the only thing that stopped me was a comment someone left on a video I'd watched months earlier. It said, "You can't apologize your way into someone's respect." And I don't know who that person was, but they saved me. So if you're that person for someone else today, leave a comment right now. Tell me what almost broke you, what almost made you go back. Just a few words. Because someone reading this needs to know they're not the only one fighting the urge to return to the cage just to stop feeling guilty. And if these stories are helping you see your own situation more clearly, if you're starting to recognize the patterns, hit that subscribe button. There's more coming. We're not done yet. And I need you to stay. We're taught that good decisions feel good, that clarity feels light, that when you do the right thing, you'll know because peace will wash over you like a warm bath. That's a lie. Sometimes the right decision feels like you're betraying everyone you've ever loved. Sometimes clarity feels like coldness. Sometimes doing the right thing makes you feel like the villain in every story that isn't your own. But feeling bad doesn't mean you chose wrong. It means you're human. It means you're grieving. It means the people around you have spent years conditioning you to believe that their comfort is your responsibility. Here's the reframe. Guilt is not a compass, it's an echo. An echo of old programming that says you're only good if you're useful. Let it echo. Don't let it redirect you. A flying monkey is someone who does the abuser's or manipulator's bidding without realizing it. They're not evil. They're often kind. They genuinely believe they're helping. That's what my cousin was. She wasn't trying to harm me. She thought she was mediating. She thought she was keeping the family together. But here's the truth. Neutrality in an abusive dynamic is always support for the abuser. When she told me to apologize so things could go back to normal, she wasn't asking me to make peace. She was asking me to go back into the cage so everyone else could stop feeling uncomfortable. How to handle flying monkeys. You don't have to educate them. You don't have to convince them. You don't owe them your story. A simple "I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and them" is enough. And if they push, I'm not discussing this further. Boundaries aren't just for the main characters, they're for the whole ensemble cast. This might be the hardest one. When someone dies, society gives you permission to mourn. There are rituals, casseroles, time off work, sympathy cards. But when you set a boundary with a living person, when you step away from a toxic family member, you're expected to just move on. No one brings you flowers. No one says, "I'm sorry for your loss." But it is a loss. You're losing the relationship you hoped for. You're losing the fantasy of who they could have been. You're losing the future where things got better. And that grief is real. Let yourself feel it. Not because you made the wrong choice, but because you're human, and humans mourn what could have been even when what could have been was never real. The paradox. You can grieve someone and still keep the door locked. Both things can be true. I grieved my father. Not the father I had, the father I wanted. The one who would have shown up with a bottle of champagne on closing day. The one who would have helped me move boxes. The one who would have been proud. That father never existed. But I mourned him anyway. After I stopped responding to the messages, I felt profoundly alone. I'd go whole days without talking to anyone. I'd see a funny meme and have no one to send it to. I'd have a hard day and realize I couldn't call my mom. It felt like loneliness, but over time I started to notice something. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't monitoring my words. I wasn't bracing for criticism or demands. I was alone, but I wasn't unsafe. And that's the difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Solitude is the presence of peace. I was in solitude, learning who I was without an audience, without someone telling me I was too much or not enough. It was quiet, but it wasn't empty. I started doing things I'd never done before. I ate dinner at 8 p.m. because I felt like it. I watched TV shows no one else in my family would approve of. I painted a wall bright yellow just because I wanted to see what it would look like. I walked around my house naked. I sang off key in the shower. I existed without apology. And slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice, the solitude started feeling less like punishment and more like permission. Here's something nobody tells you. About 6 months in, you'll have a good day. A really good day. You'll laugh at something. You'll feel light. And then out of nowhere, you'll feel guilty for feeling good. Like you don't deserve peace because someone else is upset with you. I had a moment like that. I was painting that yellow wall, music playing, actually smiling, and then I just froze, paintbrush in hand. Thinking what kind of person paints walls while their family thinks they're a monster? And I had to sit down on the floor and remind myself, your joy is not a betrayal. You're allowed to be happy even when they're angry. If you needed to hear that today, write it down. Right now. In the comments. I'm allowed to be happy. Say it where you can see it. Where we can all see it. Because we need the reminder. All of us. And if you've been binge watching trying to find the answer, trying to find the permission slip that makes this okay, let me tell you, you're not going to find it out there. You have to write it yourself. But I'll help. Subscribe and stay close. We're figuring this out together. This is the one that makes people uncomfortable, but I'm going to say it plainly. Biology is not a binding contract. You don't owe your parents access because they fed you as a child. That was their legal obligation. You don't owe your siblings loyalty because you grew up in the same house. Proximity is not intimacy. You don't owe anyone your peace, your resources, your body, your time, just because they're related to you. Families are supposed to be safe. When they're not, you're allowed to leave. And yes, people will call you cold, unforgiving, heartless. Let them. Because the people who call you heartless for protecting your heart are the same people who expected unlimited access to it. Here's where people get tripped up. They think forgiveness means letting someone back in. It doesn't. Forgiveness is what you do for you. Boundaries are also what you do for you. You can forgive your father for the harm and still never speak to him again. You can release the anger and still keep the locks changed. Forgiveness is not a key, it's not a bridge, it's not an invitation. It's a private act of letting go so bitterness doesn't corrode you from the inside. But letting go of the anger doesn't mean letting them back in. I forgave my father. Not because he deserved it, not because he asked for it, not because he changed, but because carrying that rage was exhausting and it was taking up space I needed for other things. But forgiveness didn't mean I called him, didn't mean I sent him my new address, didn't mean I let him back into my life. It just meant I stopped letting him live rent-free in my head. Let me give you some things you can actually do. You don't have to process it all at once. Set a timer, 10 minutes. Let yourself feel it fully. Cry. Scream into a pillow. Write angry letters you'll never send. Then stop. Go make tea. Watch something light. Grief in doses, not drowning, just waiting. Who in your life is asking you to just reconcile or let it go or be the bigger person? Write their names down. You don't have to cut them off, but you do need to stop expecting them to understand. Adjust your expectations. Protect your story. These are the people who will report everything you say back to the person you're trying to get away from. They mean well, but they're not safe. Write down what you're grieving, not the people, the fantasies. I'm mourning the mom who would have helped me move in. I'm mourning the family that could have been proud of me. I'm mourning the childhood where I felt safe. Naming it makes it real, and real things can be grieved and released. Make your aloneness intentional. Morning coffee in silence, an evening walk, a journal practice, a hobby you do just for you. Turn loneliness into solitude by adding presence. I started going to a coffee shop every Saturday morning, same time, same table. I'd bring a book. I didn't talk to anyone, but I wasn't isolated. I was around people. I was part of the world, just on my own terms, literally, on paper. Eleanor, give myself permission to protect my peace, even if it disappoints people, even if they call me selfish, even if I'm the only one who understands. Sign it. Keep it somewhere visible. I put mine on my bathroom mirror. I read it every morning while I brushed my teeth. You are allowed. I want to tell you what happened 6 months later. My brother's car, the one he needed $50,000 for, he bought it himself, financed it, normal interest rate, normal down payment, the way people do. Turns out, he didn't need my $50,000. He just wanted it. He wanted the easy path. And when I wouldn't give it to him, he did what he should have done in the first place. He figured it out. And nobody in my family ever mentioned it. Nobody said, "Oh, I guess Eleanor was right." Nobody apologized. They just moved on, found a new crisis, a new emergency, a new person to blame. And I wasn't part of that cycle anymore. I'd stepped out, and the carousel kept spinning without me. At first, that felt lonely, like I was missing out, like maybe I should get back on. But then I realized I wasn't missing out. I was free, free from the manufactured urgency, free from the constant crisis, free from having to drop everything every time someone in my family made a bad decision and expected me to fix it. A year after I bought the house, I had a housewarming party. Small, just people I actually liked, friends I'd made at work, neighbors who'd been kind, a few people from a book club I'd joined, nobody from my family. Not because I was punishing them, but because I didn't want them there. I didn't want to spend the whole night managing their feelings or bracing for criticism. We ate pizza on paper plates because I still didn't have real furniture. We sat on the floor. We laughed. And at one point, my friend Sarah raised her plastic cup and said, "Congrats, Eleanor, to your beautiful home." And everyone cheered. And I cried. Because it was the first time anyone had said congratulations to me about the house. A full year later. From people who weren't even related to me. And it meant more than anything my family could have said. Because it was real. It wasn't transactional. It wasn't conditional. It was just people who liked me celebrating something I'd worked hard for. That's when I realized family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up, who celebrates you, who respects your no, who sees you as a whole person and not just a resource to extract from. I'd been so focused on losing my biological family that I hadn't noticed I was building a chosen one. Here's what I wish I could go back and tell myself on that closing day. The day I sat in an empty living room, waiting for congratulations that never came. I'd tell her, you're going to feel alone for a while. You're going to doubt yourself. You're going to wonder if you're being too harsh or too sensitive or too much. You're going to get messages that make you feel crazy. You're going to have moments where you almost give in, but you won't. And on the other side of that boundary is a life you can't even imagine yet. A life where you wake up without dread. A life where you make decisions based on what you want, not what will keep everyone else calm. A life where you're not constantly bracing for impact. It won't be perfect. You'll still have hard days. You'll still grieve. But you'll be free. And freedom, even when it's lonely, is better than captivity with company. So here we are. The end. Not of the story, because this kind of story doesn't really end. It just evolves. I'm sitting here now, 3 years later, in that house with the yellow wall and the new locks and the chosen family that actually shows up. And I still have moments where I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should reach out, if maybe things would be different now. But then I remember, I didn't cut them off. I just stopped letting them cut me down. If this video resonated with you, If you felt seen or challenged or less alone, do me a favor. Hit the like button. Not for the algorithm, but so I know this mattered. So I know you were here. Leave a comment with one word that sums up how you're feeling. Seen, angry, tired, ready, free. Whatever's true. Your word will be a lighthouse for someone else lost in the dark, wondering if they're making the right choice. And if you want more conversations like this, real, messy, honest talks about boundaries, family, and becoming the person you were before the world told you who to be, subscribe. Because I'm not going anywhere. I'm Eleanor. I changed my locks. And I'm not sorry. I'll see you in the next one.